On a hot day in July 1518, a woman named Frau Troffea stepped out of her home and into a narrow, cobbled street in the city of Strasbourg. She did not walk to the market. She did not go to visit a neighbor. Instead, she began to dance. There was no music playing, there was no festival underway. Her movements were not joyful or celebratory. She simply lifted her feet and began to move her body to a rhythm only she could hear. Her arms swung, her legs kicked, and her body twisted under the summer sun. People passing by stopped to stare for a moment, perhaps thinking it was a strange, private fit of joy or madness. Then they continued on with their day, leaving her to her solitary performance. Frau Troffea did not stop dancing. The day turned into night, and then into another day, and she was still there, moving in the street. Her husband pleaded with her to come inside, to rest, to eat, but she seemed not to hear him. Her body was a machine that would not stop. Her face became a mask of exhaustion and pain. Her feet grew swollen and then began to bleed from the constant punishing motion against the hard stones. Yet her legs refused to be still, a silent and desperate spectacle held captive by an invisible force. The strange affliction that held Frau Troffea in its grip did not remain hers alone. Within a week of her first steps, another person, a neighbor who had watched with pity and fear, started to dance in the same frenzied, uncontrolled way. Then another joined, and another. The spectacle multiplied, seeping into surrounding alleys and into the city squares, claiming new victims with each passing day. What began with one woman soon became over 30 individuals, all moving with desperate, compulsive energy. Chroniclers noted the rapid spread with astonishment and fear. Men, women, and even some older children were caught up in the bizarre mania. They were not coordinated. Each person seemed trapped in a private ordeal, faces blank or etched with suffering under oppressive summer heat. The streets of Strasbourg, once filled with carts and conversation, were now punctuated by the unsettling sight of these silent, frantic dancers. They became a constant, moving presence in public spaces, a living testament to a crisis no one could understand. Some avoided them, slipping into homes with whispered prayers. Others gathered to watch. Fascination mingled with palpable dread. Oblivious to onlookers, the dancers seemed lost in a trance, driven by an unstoppable impulse. The council and guilds watched as numbers approached 100, their silent movements a screaming question nobody could answer. The city of Strasbourg in 1518 was already burdened by hardship and anxiety, making it fertile ground for such a strange event to take root. Severe famines from failed harvests, ruined fields, starving livestock, bread prices skyrocketed, pushing families into poverty and starvation. Disease was constant. Leprosy, smallpox, and the dreaded plague swept through with terrifying regularity. Life was precarious and often short. The early 16th century trembled with religious upheaval. Martin Luther's 95 Theses, only a year earlier. People lived where natural and supernatural blurred. God, the devil, saints, curses. Misfortune read as divine anger, punishment for communal sin. Daily survival in fields and workshops, diets of bread, porridge, and scant vegetables. Medical knowledge rested on 4 humours, treated with bloodletting, purging, poultices, brutal and ineffective. Into this anxious city, dancing erupted like a match on dry tinder, not merely medical, but a terrifying omen. Chroniclers captured panic. Imlin called it a strange plague, a world out of balance, a community under judgment, and the fear that anyone could lose control at any moment. The terrifying possibility filled every street, bodies no longer obeying their owners. Faced with a rapidly escalating crisis, the magistrates and guild leaders of Strasbourg were compelled to act. After consulting local physicians, the council concluded the affliction was a natural disease caused by hot blood. According to the day's wisdom, the cure was not rest, but more dancing, to dance the fever out. Officials cleared public spaces and ordered a large wooden stage, turning commerce hubs into open-air dance floors. They hired drummers and pipers to provide a constant beat, music echoing through day and night. The public spectacle did not cure, it spread. The stage, the drums, the endorsement acted as suggestion, drawing more into the mania, dozens to hundreds. Realizing their mistake, the council stopped the music, dismantled the stage, and banned public dancing. Authorities turned to penitence and isolation, believing a supernatural punishment demanded spiritual remedy. As many as 400 dancers were gathered and transported to a mountain shrine of St. Vitus, where prayer might bring peace. The physicians of 16th century Strasbourg were trained in the ancient theories of Hippocrates and Galen. They viewed the body through four humors: health as balance, sickness as imbalance. They noted heat, sweat, and frenzied motion, concluding excess hot blood in the brain, causing overheating and agitation. Their prescription followed: expel excess heat through sustained exertion. Paracelsus recorded their advice: the dancers should dance themselves out even to death as extreme therapy to restore humoral balance. Other voices differed. A priest might declare a punishment from God: look upon these poor souls, twisted by our collective sin. This is the wrath of a scorned God. A healer might warn of an evil spirit and prescribe charms and offerings. Medical, theological, and folkloric explanations coexisted, a world straining to make sense of the incomprehensible. In practice, these ideas shaped policy. First musicians and stages, then bans and pilgrimage, with fateful consequences. The limits of learned medicine stood exposed by a plague that would not fit the page. Town records are sparse on exact numbers, but they paint a grim picture of intense suffering. The dancers were not joyful. They were trapped in a grueling ordeal, and days, even weeks, without proper rest. Severe exhaustion, dehydration, starvation. Feet became swollen, blistered, bloody. Many danced until they collapsed in the streets. Chroniclers confirmed deaths. Later physician Gregor Horst said one woman danced until she fell dead. Others report strokes, heart attacks, and pure exhaustion, as many as 15 a day at the height. Citizens watched neighbors, friends, family dance themselves to death. Families tried to care for the afflicted with water and bread. The economic toll was severe. Dancers could not work. Families lost vital income. Loaded onto wagons, the rough journey tormented them. At the shrine they received small crosses and red shoes. A mass was said. Some accounts say many began to recover, but the bereaved found no relief. In 1518, many linked the plague to St. Vitus, a martyr long invoked against illnesses, believed to hold power over involuntary movements. St. Vitus's dance, later Sydenham's chorea, was thought a curse sent by the saint to punish sinners. Throughout Germany and nearby regions, accounts of dancing manias were almost always attributed to his wrath. It is certain that the anger of St. Vitus is upon us, for the people move as if possessed by his power, a punishment for our lack of faith. If St. Vitus caused it, he could remove it. Prayer, pilgrimage, ritual. After medical measures failed, the council sent dancers to chapels near Saverne, a public act of penitence, begging forgiveness for the entire city. Priests placed small crosses, red shoes, perhaps symbolizing Christ's blood or defiance of demons. The dancers were led around the altar while Mass was performed. Chronicles suggest pilgrimage, ritual, and focused prayer calmed the affliction. Within weeks, most had stopped, proof to many that St. Vitus was appeased. To understand why hundreds succumbed, modern historians look to extraordinary social and economic stress. Devastating harvests and high grain prices pushed many toward starvation. Chronic malnutrition weakened bodies and minds, heightening suggestibility. Syphilis arrived. Plague stalked cities. Leprosy lingered. Death was a constant companion. Religious upheaval amplified fear. Fervent piety and apocalyptic expectation made famine and disease feel like God's wrath. People were culturally primed to display distress physically. Fits, trances, uncontrollable dancing. A modern historian might call it an explosion of despair, a physical manifestation of collective trauma. When Frau Troffea began to dance, Her public distress triggered others at their breaking point, a contagious, unconscious response in a city ready to ignite. The dance was a desperate symptom of a sick and suffering society. A compelling physical explanation: ergot poisoning, a fungus on rye thriving after cold winters and wet springs, common around Strasbourg. Ergot produces psychoactive chemicals, ergotamine and lysergic compounds, ancestors of LSD. Contaminated bread can cause ergotism in two forms: gangrenous and convulsive. Convulsive ergotism includes spasms, twitching, seizures, and vivid hallucinations, seemingly a match for certain dancers. A tainted batch at a communal bakehouse could affect many at once. But accounts describe sustained rhythmic movement for days, not random violent seizures, and ergot restricts blood flow, undermining stamina. Chroniclers do not mention gangrenous rot of fingers, toes, and limbs, which often accompanies convulsive ergotism. A modern expert might say, ergotism can explain individual cases, but is unlikely the sole cause of the 1518 outbreak. The sheer numbers and choreography point to a more complex psychogenic phenomenon. The most widely accepted explanation today is mass psychogenic illness, mass hysteria. This wasn't faked or imagined, it was genuine, extreme psychological distress manifesting as physical symptoms. In a community under prolonged stress, seeing one dramatic symptom can trigger others, spread not by germ or poison but by social contagion, like a yawn passing through a room. Beliefs in possession, curses, and saints provided a script. Frau Troffea's dance fit that context and became a template for collective anxiety. The city's response, musicians, stage, public focus, validated the behavior, lowering the threshold for others and turning cases into an epidemic. A modern psychiatrist might say the dancers were in a dissociative state, not choosing to dance nor puppets of an external force, bodies acting out a shared crisis via cultural scripts. It began with a visible trigger and vulnerable observers. It ended when dancers left public view and entered shrines, a change of environment, plus trusted ritual serving as a powerful counter-suggestion, freeing minds through belief and hope. Centuries after the music has faded and the dancers have fallen still, the dancing plague of 1518 remains one of history's most unsettling mysteries. We can read the chroniclers, analyze social conditions, and propose medical theories, but certainty eludes us. The event sits at the intersection of history, psychology, and religion, a reminder of the complexity of human experience. It forces us to confront the mind-body connection and how it's shaped by the world around us. No single theory, curse of a saint, effects of a poison, mass psychogenic illness, explains everything. The truth likely converged from stress and malnutrition, perhaps mild toxins and fervent belief. It was not simple, but a tapestry of misery, fear, faith, and biology. What we know for certain is human, a community at its limit, leaders grasping, dancers suffering, caught in a nightmare from which they could not wake. We are left with silent streets of a city that once could not stop dancing.